It's Monday, the 16th of March. From the MEN newsroom, this is Channel M's Lunchtime News, and these are today's headlines. Terror warnings at the hair salon. Posters go up warning people to watch out for anything
to be honest,
suspicious.
I wouldn't get it. Do you know, I'd have to read it a few times to think, oh yeah.
Also coming up, the wall in Rochdale that's putting at least 20 homes under threat.
They should have come and maintained it, shouldn't they? Or checked on it, kept a check on it, but they haven't. They've waited till it's nearly falling down now.
And honouring the heroes from the armed forces, the soldiers given the freedom of Bolton.
It's the mere fact that we have had this honour placed on us that really is the most important aspect of this. It says that this town supports us.
Good afternoon. We start with the plan to take the fight against terrorism to hair salons, petrol stations and supermarkets. A new poster campaign is kicking off here in Manchester, with the places being the focus for searching out information. Ben Bland's got more details.
This memorial to Detective Constable Stephen Oak is a lasting reminder, if ever one were needed, that the threat of terror can and does claim lives. Detective Constable Oak was stabbed to death here in 2003 as he tried to arrest the terrorist Kamal Borgas, who was later found guilty of plotting to spread poison on the streets of the UK. And with this latest poster campaign, Greater Manchester Police are hoping that members of the public will report the likes of Borgas before they can do any harm. The posters will be put up in hair salons as well as the usual airports and railway stations. So what do customers and staff here at the barbershop on Lansdowne Road think of these posters?
Yeah, with the dodgy chemicals, they're not really household materials, are they? So, if you see anything suspicious, ring the police, get them all nicked, I say.
It doesn't really hit me with anything, you know. That's just rubbish, so I'm afraid that's commonplace, isn't it?
Do you think the posters work? Are they eye-catching enough?
If there was enough of them big enough and everywhere, yeah. But that, to be honest, I wouldn't get it. Do you know, I'd have to read it a few times to think, oh yeah.
So, a mixed reaction. But at the start of this month-long campaign, police insist it's not linked to any current specific threat. They're simply urging everyone to report suspicious activity and make the call that could save lives. Ben Bland, Channel M News.
Thanks, Ben, and we'll be hearing from the police who are kick-starting that poster campaign in our early evening news from 5 o'clock tonight. 5 suspected hooligans have been arrested over the rioting here in Manchester last May on the night of the UEFA Cup final. Trouble broke out among Rangers fans after a big screen that was supposed to show the match broke down. Those that have been picked up are all in their 20s and 30s and are being brought back here for questioning. Detectives say this was the first in a series of coordinated raids. Forensic experts are checking through a bag of bullets that was found in the centre of Manchester on Saturday evening. Upper Brook Street had to be closed for 10 hours so police could wait to search the area in daylight. The ammunition is commonly used in handguns, and police are now looking for clues over where it had come from. A family in Bolton have had a lucky escape after their home was blown apart in a gas blast. The explosion happened at breakfast time on Green Lane at Great Lever. Beverly Walkden's on this.
This incident happened at around 7:10 this morning. It's thought to have been a gas explosion on the ground floor. Upstairs sleeping was a 31-year-old mum, her 14-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter who were struggling to breathe. But luckily for them, 2 neighbours, a dad and his 14-year-old son, were on hand and rushed to their rescue.
We thought something had dropped out the sky, basically, it was that loud. And I've gone through the front window in the living room and got to the stairs, and basically the flames were too strong for me to go anywhere near the stairs. So I've come back out, and my son's told the little girl to drop, and my son's catched the little girl, and then we've catched the boy, and then we've told the mothers that she needed to jump as well. She took a bit of persuading, but she had to get out, so she jumped as well. Like.
What do you think about the actions of the neighbour?
I would say very public-spirited, in as much as he heard a blast and rather than just reporting it, went to see if he could help his neighbours. He then found a fire that he couldn't get past, but still persisted and assisted mum and the kids to get out of the house. So a very public-spirited and a brave thing to do.
So you've been inside the house. What sort of state is it in?
The gable ends appear to have been pushed away. You can see bricks displaced. Doors have been blasted across the room. And windows have been blown out, plus the roof's been lifted off. All in all, a fairly serious explosion.
Now, you put your safety to one side. What was going through your mind?
Well, you don't think about your own safety at the time, you just react on what you've got in front of you, and that's what I did. I just knew I had to get them out because there's 2 small children in there.
Well, Mum and her 2 children miraculously walked away from this explosion without any injuries at all. In the meantime, National Grid, the fire brigade, the police and loss adjusters are all now wondering whether their home will have to be razed to the ground. Beverly Walkden for Channel M News.
Another of Manchester's major regeneration projects has fallen victim to the recession. Work on the massive new Islington site in Ancoats has all but halted. When it was first suggested back in 2002, planners said it would turn the area into the best place in Manchester. Less than a tenth of the 1,700 properties there are finished. Developers insist they'll carry on when the market's ready. The number of passengers jetting off from airports has fallen for the first time since 1991. Here in Manchester, the numbers getting away dropped by 3.8%. Nationally, 235 million passengers passed through the country's terminals during 2008, a 1.9% drop on the previous year. 3 robbers, one armed with a scythe, have burst into a social club in West Didsbury. They made off with money from the till and 3 cash boxes after smashing their way in through a side window. They then frisked a customer and forced him to hand over the keys to his car, which they drove off in. Rochdale Council is facing a £1 million bill for repairing a wall that's in danger of collapsing and destroying at least 20 homes. The problem was first flagged up more than 30 years ago, but work's still not started. Georgia Calvin-Smith has more on this.
Rochdale Council's been warned that the retaining wall in Sparth Bottom Road is in such a bad way that it could collapse at any time without warning, with catastrophic consequences. It's been 2 months since the local authority was ordered by Bury Magistrates Court to take responsibility for repairs, but as of yet, no work has begun.
Concerns were first raised about the safety of the wall back in 1973, but council and residents couldn't agree as to who was going to foot the bill, and so work stalled. Over 3 decades later, and work still hadn't been started. But about 3 years ago, the council got in touch with people living on St Albans Terrace, saying that they would start repairs, but only if the people living here paid for it, at the cost of about £36,000 a household.
They didn't think we were going to do what we did. They thought there's no chance they'd take us to court. They've got to pay for everything now. 30, 40, 50 years ago, they should have come and maintained it, shouldn't they? Or checked on it, kept a check on it, but they haven't. They've waited till it's nearly falling down now.
For far too long, the wall has cast a shadow on residents' enjoyment of their own homes, and many are relieved that the long-running legal battle over who is responsible for the structure's maintenance has finally been resolved in their favour.
I feel quite pleased, really, that it's almost coming to an end. It sort of stopped us from taking steps, you know, to spend money, really, on a house that maybe wasn't going to be here.
The council now faces an estimated £1 million bill for repairs, but has still not yet set a date for work to begin. Council chiefs now argue that defects were partially caused by faulty sewers, and in a statement, the head of strategic housing has said, "A collapse could be expected in the near future, so I have to stress the urgency of the issue. We're discussing whether the council should take legal action against United Utilities to try and recover a proportion of the costs." The council has considered alternatives to repair, including the possibility of compulsorily purchasing the 22 properties affected, but mending the wall would be the cheapest option. A final decision is still to be made by the council's cabinet at a later date. Georgia Calvin-Smith, Channel M News.
150 soldiers have marched through the centre of Bolton as they were awarded the freedom of the borough. The members of the 1st Battalion, the Duke of Lancaster Regiment, were cheered along by crowds of people from the town.
This is the great occasion of the conferring of the freedom of Bolton on the new regiment. It's the mere fact that we have had this honour placed on us that really is the most important aspect to this. It says that this town supports us, it supports us in what we are doing, and no soldier likes to go and do what he has to do without the feeling that those back home are right on his right shoulder, looking after him and rooting him on. This, in many respects, is a manifestation of that support. I think there's a resurgence of real interest in the military in this country, and it's up and down the length and breadth of the country. It's not just in the northwest. I think people more and more appreciate the really tough job the military have, not just the army, but the Navy and the Air Force as well.
The Austrian man, accused of imprisoning his own daughter for 24 years in a secret underground dungeon and fathering her children, has admitted rape and incest but denies murder. Josef Fritzl's gone on trial amid intense media interest. The 73-year-old also denies enslavement. The case against him centres on whether one of his children would have survived infancy if he'd arranged for better medical care. If convicted, he faces life in prison and a verdict expected by Friday. Jade Goody's family say they're preparing themselves for the end. The terminally ill reality TV star's conditions deteriorated over the weekend. Her publicist Max Clifford says the inevitable could happen at any time. She's already told her 2 young sons that the angels are calling her. Some of Manchester's biggest unsung heroes have been recognised at an event to mark the end of Peace Week. Community activists who try to make sure the city's children have a peaceful future gathered at the City of Manchester Stadium for the celebration, organised by campaign group Charisma.
And the winner is Dane Willis.
And the winner is...
The next generation!
And the winner is Mr. Clive Fritzl.
The winner is Anthony Week.
So in the community, I'm more like getting the youth them out of gangs and encouraging youth not to join gangs. Going into schools, doing workshops in schools, doing DJ workshops and included gang-related subjects so we can relate to the youth them. I'm also a street pastor which patrols the streets at night, weekends at night, just talking to people. It's not about come to church, we'll save you. It's not about that. It's about mainly just talking to them, showing them that we're here for them, for the community. If they've got problems, we'll try our best to help them.
The Next Generation is a youth-led youth group which is run by young people, and we aim to get the youth into jobs, college courses, personal development plans, try and keep them off the streets, get them into something constructive. We also do driving schools, mentoring, one-to-one sessions. Basically, we're a group where, young people come and talk to us and we're there to support them.
Right, let's take a look at the lunchtime sports headlines now, and with details of a shock departure and arrival at Boundary Park. Here's Sam Goodman.
Thank you, Jim. That's right. John Sheridan was dismissed by Oldham Athletic yesterday following his side's 6-2 drubbing at MK Dons on Saturday. And in a somewhat surprise move, the club have turned to former fans' favourite Joe Royle to guide them until the end of the season. Well, this will be 59-year-old Royle's second spell at Latics, having guided them to 2 FA Cup semi-finals and a League Cup final. He's previously managed at Everton, Manchester City and Ipswich Town, and with Oldham currently just outside the top 6, his immediate aim will be to get them into the playoffs with 9 games of their season remaining. Well, we'll be hearing from Joe Royle in our news bulletin at 5 o'clock this evening. Well, Amir Khan has been promised the opportunity to fight for a world title by promoter Frank Warren following Saturday's win over Marco Antonio Barrera. Khan was ahead on points when the contest was stopped in round 5 due to a severe cut on Barrera's forehead, the result of an accidental clash of heads. And after their fight, we found Amir in good spirits.
In the fight, everything was going in. His head was going in, his elbows were going in. I don't know if you can see it from outside the ring, but, I felt his elbow a few times on top of my head.
He's a Mexican.
He was tough, and he knew everything, but his cut, I don't know how it happened. And I was catching with some clean shots. I felt very strong in there, and, it seemed like I didn't even get out of second gear. The pace was, I could have upped the pace and fought throwing more punches, but I'm not seen the fight yet. But, every time I kept thinking, look, I'm going to use my brains and just box this guy. It seemed so easy in there. It was a big fight for me, make or break fight. If I lost this fight, then forget about Amir Khan. People would have thought, this guy's very concerned with all the Harrison who made it and just couldn't finish it off. But I'm sure I've proved to a lot of people, how good I am now, and I'm sure the criticism I used to get, leaves off.
And another man with a big smile on Saturday night was promoter Frank Warren.
I think the cut was bad, but I think he was winning every round. I mean, he was vastly superior than Barrera. His speed, his accuracy of his punches. He just seemed strong, physically stronger, and I think had the fight gone on even down a bit of cut, I think he would have stopped Barrera. We've got to consider the next couple of weeks what the next move is. I would like him to fight again in June. He's got to make a decision whether he wants to do that, and then after that, and then he's having a week off. When he comes back, we'll sit down and look at a few options and hopefully come up with something that's going to satisfy everybody and more importantly satisfy him.
Well, there's more bad news from the West Indies, where the England cricket team have slumped to another defeat, this time in the 2020 one-day international series. England limped to 121 for 9, with the Windies passing that total with 6 wickets and 12 balls to spare. In ice hockey, the Manchester Phoenix suffered yet another league defeat last night, this time 5-3 at the Altrincham Ice Dome against the Newcastle Vipers. Phoenix now face the Belfast Giants in the second leg of the Challenge Cup final tomorrow, taking a 4-3 first leg advantage to the Dundonald Ice Bowl. And Disbury's Matt Crampton and Farnworth's Jason Kenny have been named among 19 British riders for next week's World Track Championships in Poland. So Chris Hoy is injured, so misses out, meaning the focus will be on Olympian Victoria Pendleton, who will look to retain her 2 world titles. And finally, in boxing, it's been announced that Salford's new European champion Jamie Moore will make his first defence of the title in Sunderland on May the 2nd against Ukraine's former amateur star Roman Zuman. Well, that's all from me for now. Join me again later this evening. We'll hear from Amir Khan and Oldham's new boss, Joe Royal.
Sam, thanks very much for the update. Lots still to come on the lunchtime news. We'll be looking at the suggestion to force shops to charge a minimum price for alcohol and all the colour from the weekend's St Patrick's Day parade.
It's Europe, one of the biggest parades in Europe that marks the Irish festivals. We've got over 50 floats, including some of the best bands in the country coming from Scotland, Oldham and all over the northwest.
This is the Lunchtime News on Monday afternoon. Welcome back. Don't forget you can always go online to channelm.co.uk to either watch this programme again or any of our other reports as well. On there right now, the council workers just back from their climb up Mount Kilimanjaro and find out what happened when demonstrators took their fight to get millions of pounds of charity cash given back to the Christie to Gordon Brown. That's at channelm.co.uk. Next, it looks like the government's decided to ignore advice to put a minimum price on alcohol. The country's chief medical officer wants shops to be forced to charge at least 50p a unit for drinks. Here's what effect that would have. A pack of 4 lagers with a unit in each can would have to sell for no less than £4. A typical 2-litre bottle of cider would cost around £5.50. The average bottle of wine would be at least £4.50, and a 70 centilitre bottle of vodka would end up costing around £14. Well, joining us now to talk a little bit more about this is Heather Saltwag from the group Our Life, which campaigns on alcohol issues here in the North West. Good afternoon. First of all, this suggestion of having these minimum prices, how do you think that would work? What do you make of it?
Well, Our Life has run a big drink debate in the past year, so we had 30,000 people from across the region responding, and we know that the vast majority told us that price and discount affect how much they drink, so it increases how much they drink. We also know that it costs the NHS just in this region £400 million a year, and that's not just A&E, that's long-term people drinking regularly, and that's without police costs to disability benefits and so on. So Our Life thinks it's a very good idea to introduce the minimum price, which would help the most vulnerable people, those that drink at the most harmful levels, as well as young people who might tend to go more for the cheap alcoholic drinks.
It's not going to be very popular, though, is it? Especially with those who don't drink over the recommended levels.
Yeah. Well, I am one of those people, I have to say, and one of the things that frustrates me, as it does many of the people that I speak to, is how much alcohol abuse costs our system, and that we're paying for that as taxpayers. But above and beyond that, it's interesting to note that during our big drink debate, lots of people came on our discussion forum and were in support of further action to reduce alcohol harm. You don't often hear from those people. The cab driver I spoke to yesterday was interesting, because I expected him to say, oh no, not a good idea, but in fact what he said was he brews his own beer, he likes a good quality beer, but he thought it was a very good idea as a starting point to reduce the worst excesses. And actually, for those of us who drink sensibly, a bottle of wine for £4.50 seems reasonable. I know it's hard times, but maybe we need to consider that drinking sensibly does just mean a glass of wine rather than 3 or 4.
OK, thank you very much for giving your thoughts on that this afternoon. Much appreciated. Let's check some more of the day's main headlines now. And a group of students from here in Manchester have taken their fight against knife crime into their own hands. The youngsters have used the setting of the famous Victoria Baths to shoot a film trying to show other youngsters the dangers of carrying a blade.
OK, just roll with the whole thing and action!
We're making a series of knife crime films it's kind of a
people have come together. The police have funded this, and Tameside Council and the youth service, all with a kind of an initiative to kind of make these knife crime films that are going to be made for YouTube, kind of targeting young people to get the message across that, you know, if you carry a knife yourself, you're more likely to be a victim of knife crime. The kids have really enjoyed themselves, and they're picking up. A lot of them haven't done anything before with the cameras or acted, or, you know, but the kind of like the end results that we've got. We've shot 3 of the 4 films. This is the 4th one today, and the end results have been fantastic.
Green groups are criticising the decision to leave the lights on at a city centre store that closed 6 months ago. Ilva on Great Ancoat Street shut in September, but the bulbs are burning 24 hours a day because nobody knows how to turn them off. The landlord of the property says it's aware of the problem but doesn't have access to the computer that runs the lighting. A computer virus has knocked out the email systems for the whole of the Manchester diocese. The city's Bishop Reverend Nigel McCulloch's been one of the worst hit after 1 million spam messages landed in their inbox. They've not been able to get any genuine emails since March the 3rd and are now hoping anyone who's been trying to get in touch will pick up the phone instead. Thousands of people have gathered here in Manchester for one of the biggest St Patrick's Day parades in Europe. The city's Lord Mayor, complete with specially dyed green hair, led the procession from the World Heritage Centre in Cheetham Hill to the Town Hall. A minute's silence was kept to remember a police officer and 2 British soldiers who were killed in attacks by Republican groups last week.
We've got the Irish Festival Parade. It's an annual event. It's been going for over 21 years from outside the Irish World Heritage Centre at Cheetham Hill, and we're going into Albert Square at the Town Hall and then back out again to Cheetham Hill. It's Europe, one of the biggest parades in Europe that marks the Irish festivals. We've got over 50 floats, including some of the best bands in the country coming from Scotland, Oldham and all over the northwest. We have thousands of people obviously be involved walking in the parade and involved in the floats. And the other thing is that we'll have thousands of people in the city centre today to watch it.
My hair has caused that much controversy in this city. It really has. You're probably aware the different colours than it has been in the past. So I did promise green and white for St Patrick's. You've all got to watch this space though for St George's Day.
So as a mark of respect of our great Irish community in Manchester, can we have a minute's silence in their honour?
Our top stories: hair salons, supermarkets and petrol stations have been chosen to display new anti-terror messages. The campaign's being officially started here in Manchester at this lunchtime and aims to get more of us thinking more carefully about spotting suspicious activity. 5 people are on their way back to Manchester after being arrested in Scotland by police investigating last year's riots by Rangers fans here for the UEFA Cup final. They were picked up in dawn raids and detectives say more are planned. And a mum and her 2 children have escaped from their home in Bolton after a gas explosion early this morning. Those are the latest headlines, and that was the Lunchtime News. We'll have more on all those stories in our early evening news with Andy Crane from 5 tonight, but from me and the Lunchtime team, bye-bye for now.